Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a financial tool that, honestly, gets a lot of mixed reactions, but it can be absolutely incredibly powerful when you use it right. We're talking about the fixed deferred annuity. So let's just pop the hood together and see exactly how these things work, how your money actually grows, and, what they're really going to cost you.
To tackle this, we're going to walk through 5 quick steps. First, the core concept. Second, tax deferral 101. Third, customizing your contract. Fourth, annuity fees and costs. And finally, liquidity versus guarantees.
Now, if you've ever looked at your savings account and just felt this sudden knot in your stomach wondering, how on earth do I make sure I don't outlive my money? Well, you are definitely not alone. Planning for retirement is literally like trying to put together a giant, confusing puzzle where the picture on the box just keeps changing. And, it feels like the dog ate half the edge pieces. But that exact fear, that fear of outliving your hard-earned savings, is the precise problem that annuities were built to solve.
Right, let's jump into Section 1, the core concept. What exactly is a fixed deferred annuity? Okay, so the absolute first thing you need to take away here is that a fixed deferred annuity is not your standard savings account. It's not some short-term certificate of deposit either. According to the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, the NAIC, it's actually a long-term insurance contract. You pay a premium to the insurance company, and in exchange, they guarantee you a series of regular income payments down the road. Actually, fun fact, an annuity is literally the only financial product out there that can contractually guarantee an income stream that lasts for the rest of your life. Pretty wild, right? So a deferred annuity basically has 2 distinct phases, or, lives. First up is year 0, where you pay your premium. This could be one big lump sum or spread out over multiple payments. After that, you enter what's called the accumulation period. This is where your money just sits back and earns a guaranteed minimum interest rate that the insurance company sets. Then, usually years later when you actually retire, you transition into the payout period. That's when all that accumulated value gets flipped into a steady, reliable income stream. Moving on to Section 2, Tax Deferral 101, how your cash value grows without those painful annual tax hits.
Now, nailing down the vocabulary here is absolutely crucial. Under current federal law, annuities offer tax-deferred accumulation. That basically means you aren't paying a dime in taxes on your interest as long as it stays inside the annuity. But, and this is a massive but, tax-deferred is definitely not the same thing as tax-free. You are going to owe taxes on that interest eventually when you pull it out. However, pushing that tax bill down the road gives your money a really unique, protected environment to grow. And that brings us to the real magic of tax deferral. It's like this compounding triad. Think about it. You're earning interest on your initial principal, sure, and you're earning interest on your past interest. But here is the absolute kicker. You are also earning interest on the money that you would normally be handing straight over to the IRS. Because that money stays locked in your account, it's in there working for you. Which, let's be honest, is a pretty nice change of pace when you're trying to build up that nest egg. Plus, there's another really smart strategic advantage here. By the time you finally hit that payout period and start taking your income, well, you're probably retired, right? And for a lot of us, that means our overall income has dropped, which drops us right into a lower tax bracket than we were in during our peak earning years. So you basically dodge the taxes when your rate was super high, and you pay them later when your rate is ideally much lower. It's a really solid strategy.
Okay, Section 3, customizing your contract. Let's talk about understanding riders and payouts.
So since literally every retiree's life, health, and family situation is totally unique, insurance companies actually give you choices for how you get your money. Once you pull the trigger on that payout period, you've got some distinct paths. First, there's life only. This pays you for your entire lifetime and almost always gives you the biggest monthly check, but it strictly ends the moment you pass away. Now, if you want a bit more of a safety net, you could go with life annuity with period certain. That one guarantees your payments for a set window, say 10 or 20 years, even if you pass away before then. And hey, if you're married, there's the joint and survivor option that makes sure the money keeps flowing as long as either you or your spouse is still alive. Just keep in mind, because those last 2 options pack in extra safety guarantees, your actual monthly payout is going to be a bit smaller than the life-only route. But, what if the unthinkable happens before you even start getting those payouts? Well, most contracts actually bake in a standard death benefit. If you were to pass away during that accumulation phase we talked about, your beneficiary is typically going to get either the total accumulated contract value or the total premiums you paid in. Basically, whichever number is bigger. So it's this really nice built-in layer of protection for your legacy.
All right, on to Section 4, Annuity, Fees, and Costs. We are going to get radically honest about what you actually pay here.
Look, absolute guarantees in the financial world do not come for free, for sure. So you absolutely have to know about the fees that get scooped right out of your contract value. The big elephant in the room is the surrender charge. This is a steep penalty if you pull out too much of your money early or if you completely break the contract. You've also got to keep an eye out for flat contract fees, per transaction fees, and, depending on your zip code, state premium taxes. See, the insurance company has to pay that tax to the state, but they might just turn around and deduct it from your premium, or maybe even your final payout. Now, if you do decide to bail and surrender your contract early, you really need to wrap your head around something called the MVA, or Market Value Adjustment. It's kind of complex, but basically it's a risk-sharing feature. If interest rates in the real world have swung significantly since the day you bought the annuity, the MVA steps in and adjusts your cash surrender value. And yeah, it could adjust it higher, but it can definitely adjust it lower too. Because you're stepping up and sharing that risk with the insurance company, annuities that include an MVA usually throw you a slightly higher interest rate up front as a reward. Now, take a breath. It's not all rigid locks and massive penalties. There are some really important caveats here. For one, those scary surrender charges usually drop a little bit every single year, and they eventually vanish completely once you've held the contract for a certain amount of time. Plus, a lot of contracts actually give you a free withdrawal feature that lets you take out a set chunk, usually around 10%, without the company charging you a dime in penalties. But do not forget the tax man. If you try to pull out your earnings before you hit age 59 and a half, the IRS is going to slap you with a 10% tax penalty. And yes, that is right on top of your regular income taxes. Ouch. Let's bring it home with Section 5, Liquidity versus Guarantees, the ultimate trade-off. When it really comes down to it, this whole thing is a giant balancing act. Over on one side of the scale, you've got these incredibly heavy, powerful guarantees. We're talking an income stream you literally cannot outlive, rock-solid minimum interest rates, and absolute protection for your principal when the market tanks. But to get all that good stuff, the scale demands a massive trade-off on the other side. You are giving up liquidity. You are accepting those steep surrender penalties if you happen to change your mind. Essentially, you're making a very strict, very long-term commitment. We actually pulled some really fantastic insight from the professional profile of Paul G. Wild. He's a licensed insurance and retirement planning pro, and his core philosophy just completely hits the nail on the head for how anyone should approach this. He says you have to educate before recommending and explain both benefits and drawbacks. He's super upfront that annuities are absolutely not a one-size-fits-all magic bullet. Honestly, understanding all these exact limitations we just talked about is every bit as critical as getting hyped up about the lifetime income benefits. So the absolute bottom line here, these products are long-term commitments, full stop. Even the NIAC guide is crystal clear about this. You should never, ever buy an annuity to try and hit some short-term financial goal. It is absolutely 100% not a substitute for having a highly liquid, super easy to access emergency savings account sitting at your local bank. So as you sit down to review your own retirement game plan and you weigh all the mechanics and those radically honest costs we just covered, here is the final, ultimate question you've got to ask yourself. To build a retirement where you literally never run out of a paycheck, are you willing to trade a chunk of today's access for the absolute security of tomorrow's guarantees? And honestly, more importantly, if you aren't willing to make that trade, what exactly is your backup plan when the market turns completely upside down? Really something to chew on. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer. Keep digging into this stuff and always keep asking the right questions.